There was once a man who grew up in a world where the law said people like him were not equal, but he turned that very same law into a tool to change the course of history. What if I told you he walked into the highest court of the land, where not a single person looked like him, and forced the system to face its own hypocrisy? This is not a movie plot. This is the real story of Thurgood Marshall, the first black justice of the United States Supreme Court. Let's dive into the story of the boy who challenged the law, the lawyer who defeated segregation, and the justice who broke barriers in the Supreme Court. Thurgood Marshall was born in Baltimore, Maryland in 1908. His parents, William and Norma, didn't come from wealth or privilege. His father was a railroad porter and his mother a school teacher. Now, here's the twist though they didn't have much, they had something far more powerful: a love for debate. His father, William, loved to sit in the courthouse, watching trials for hours. At night, he'd come home and reenact those cases with his kids. And little Thurgood, he loved it. But he did more than watch, he argued back. His father once said, "Son, you'll either grow up to be a lawyer or end up in jail with all that arguing." That prediction, it came true in ways no one imagined. But life for young Thurgood wasn't easy. The America he grew up in was split down the middle by racism. Schools, buses, restaurants, everything was segregated. Imagine being told every single day that you were less than just because of your skin color. Most kids absorbed it. But not Thurgood. Here's an early clue to his destiny. In school, when Thurgood misbehaved, his teacher made him memorize parts of the U.S. Constitution. Punishment turned into power. By graduation, he knew the Constitution like the back of his hand, and he would later use it as his ultimate weapon. When it came time for college, Thurgood went to Lincoln University in Pennsylvania. There, he wasn't just any student. He argued with professors, he challenged rules, and he sharpened his debating skills. He graduated in 1930, ready for law school. But here's where the suspense kicks in. Thurgood applied to the University of Maryland Law School, the same school right in his own hometown. And guess what? They rejected him. Why? Because he was black. Pause for a second. Imagine that sting. The law itself, the very system meant to protect rights, was used to slam the door in his face. But here's where fate turned. Instead of giving up, Thurgood enrolled at Howard University Law School in Washington, D.C. And at Howard, he met the man who would shape his destiny, Charles Hamilton Houston, a brilliant lawyer who believed in using the courts as a battlefield against segregation. Houston told his students, "A lawyer's either a social engineer or a parasite on society." That line hit Thurgood like lightning. He decided then he would be a social engineer. After graduating first in his class in 1933, Marshall started practicing law. Soon after, he joined the NAACP, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. This wasn't just a job. This was war. Marshall traveled across the country, often risking his life, representing black clients who had been denied justice. In one case, he defended black teachers who were paid less than white teachers. In another, he fought for black students denied admission to white-only universities. But remember that law school that rejected him, University of Maryland. Guess what? In 1935, Marshall came full circle. He sued them. He represented Donald Gaines Murray, a young black man denied entry because of his race. Marshall argued, if the law school has no equal program for black students, then denying Murray admission is unconstitutional, and he won. It was sweet justice. The very institution that shut him out was forced to open its doors to someone else because of him. That victory lit a fire under Marshall's career. Now we arrive at the turning point, the case that would shake America to its core. Brown versus Board of Education of Topeka, Kansas. In the early 1950s, public schools across America were segregated. Black children were forced to attend separate schools, often in terrible conditions, while white children got the better facilities. The law of the land was based on an old case called Plessy versus Ferguson from 1896, which said segregation was okay as long as facilities were separate but equal. But in reality, they were never equal. Marshall, working with the NAACP, decided to take this on. He gathered cases from different states where black families were challenging school segregation. They rolled them all into one giant case, Brown versus Board. Here's the suspense. Marshall stood before the Supreme Court in 1952. Picture the scene: 9 white justices towering over him, listening as he argued that segregation in schools violated the Constitution. Marshall pointed to the 14th Amendment, which guarantees equal protection under the law. He argued that separate was inherently unequal. But it wasn't easy. Some justices pushed back. Some believed society wasn't ready for integration. But Marshall, calm and determined, used every ounce of his legal brilliance. He presented studies showing how segregation damaged the self-esteem of black children. One famous study by psychologists Kenneth and Mamie Clark showed black children choosing white dolls over black ones, saying the white dolls were better. Marshall told the court, segregation wasn't just about buildings. It was about the hearts and minds of children. And then, in 1954, the Supreme Court delivered a unanimous decision, 9-0. They struck down segregation in public schools. Chief Justice Earl Warren's words echoed, "Separate educational facilities are inherently unequal." It was a victory for the ages. Thurgood Marshall had taken down legalized segregation with the power of the Constitution. But don't think it was all glory. Every victory came with danger. Marshall's work meant traveling through the Deep South, often at night, where angry mobs and the Ku Klux Klan lurked. He received death threats constantly. In one chilling story, Marshall was almost lynched in Tennessee after winning a case. Police officers escorted him out of town, but instead of taking him to safety, they drove him toward a river, an area known for lynchings. He realized what was happening. Luckily, friends from the NAACP intervened just in time. This wasn't just courtroom drama. This was survival. Every time Marshall stepped into a courtroom, he was putting his life on the line. After years of victories, Marshall's reputation soared. Presidents took notice. In 1961, President John F. Kennedy appointed him to the U.S. Court of Appeals. That was a big step. But Marshall still had his eyes on bigger fights. Then in 1965, President Lyndon B. Johnson made a bold move. He appointed Thurgood Marshall as the first black Solicitor General of the United States. That meant Marshall would now represent the federal government before the Supreme Court. Think about the irony. The same court where he once stood fighting segregation, he now walked in representing the U.S. government itself. And he didn't disappoint. As Solicitor General, he argued 19 cases before the Supreme Court. He won 14 of them. His victories weren't just about civil rights, they covered everything from antitrust laws to criminal justice. Then came 1967, the year that changed history. President Lyndon B. Johnson nominated Thurgood Marshall to the United States Supreme Court. The Senate confirmation hearings were heated. Some senators grilled him about his views on race, crime, and the Constitution. But Johnson pushed hard. He said, "This man has argued more cases before the Supreme Court than any man alive. And he has won most of them. He deserves to be here." On August 30, 1967, the Senate confirmed him. And just like that, Thurgood Marshall became the first black justice in the history of the Supreme Court. The barrier was broken. As a justice, Marshall served for 24 years, from 1967 to 1991. On the bench, he was known for his sharp wit, his booming laugh, and his relentless defense of individual rights. He fought for the poor, for minorities, for the voiceless. He often stood as the liberal voice on the court, writing powerful dissents when he disagreed with the majority. He believed the Constitution was a living document, meant to expand freedom, not restrict it. Marshall once said, "The Constitution does not prohibit the government from discriminating on the basis of race. The Constitution prohibits the government from doing so." That simple but powerful reminder shaped his rulings. He fought for affirmative action, for abortion rights, and against the death penalty. He believed the law should protect the weak against the powerful. By 1991, his health was failing. Diabetes and heart problems made it hard for him to keep up with the court's workload. He retired that year, after nearly a quarter century on the bench. Thurgood Marshall passed away in 1993, but his legacy, it still echoes in every courtroom, every classroom, every corner of America where justice is debated. He was a man who turned rejection into victory, who fought racism with the law, who risked his life for equality, and who finally took a seat at the highest table of justice in the land. So what do we learn from Thurgood Marshall's story? We learn that courage is not the absence of fear, it's moving forward despite it. We learn that the law is only as strong as the people willing to stand up and use it. And we learn that one person, armed with conviction and determination, can bend the arc of history toward justice. Thurgood Marshall didn't just break barriers. He built bridges for generations to come. If this story inspired you, don't let it stop here. Hit the like button to show your support, drop a comment with your thoughts about Marshall's incredible journey, share this video with someone who needs a reminder that change is possible, and don't forget to subscribe for more real stories of people who changed the world. Because stories like these aren't just history, they're fuel for the future.